Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
We have a fun GeoGearHeads for you today. This is episode 81. We're joined by Rich Owings of GPS Tracklog for a discussion of some of the new GPSRs and what's been happening and what might be happening in the near future. To you, our new listeners, I'm the bad cop with my usual co-host, Daryl W4.
And it's good to be back recording with you tonight. You know, though, I caught something when I was editing last week's show, the audio edition. We actually had one type of list that we left out of the geocaching.com premium features, and that was the watch list.
How do we do that? I mean, those things are excellent for events and shared caches, so you get emails for any cachers or travelers placed on that watch list, and you can keep track of the logs.
Yeah. I'll take full credit for leaving that off the list because it's one of those that so many people seem to overlook, and so did I. But it is a very, very useful feature. It's just one of those that doesn't help you find the FTFs, so most people tend to forget it.
FTFs, the main reason, face it, that people have the premium membership.
I'll give them that.
Well, now that we've let everyone know that, next week we're going to do a randomized show. That's a series of topics from the audience, so please send in your questions, tips, you know what, even corrections. If we made a mistake and left something out of that premium show, let us know. We'll correct it next week as well. Comments or any other feedback you have, and we'll discuss them. You can email us at geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com or call them into our voicemail line at area code 206-350-3647. You can also use those to send us any feedback for the next Munzie show on in August 1st.
Wow, I know we've been having some problems getting our schedules to mesh with the Munzie guys, but April's pretty bad.
Well, we're planning ahead. April of next year, we're going to talk about Munzie somehow.
Well, we may do that as well, but they will be on August 1st. So you can watch us record that show. You can watch us record the randomized show, whatever you want. You can watch us record those live. And we record at about 9:10 p.m. Eastern or 6:10 p.m. Pacific every Thursday night. And if you join us through Google+, just watch the GeoGearHeads page for that Hangout on Air. Anyone can watch the shows that we do through YouTube streaming, and we actually do a post to the Cachamaniacs site, so if you browse over there a little after 9 p.m., you should find that post there and be able to watch.
And for those watching tonight, you're probably looking at our poor guest just sitting there quietly. I think it's about time we get to him, so we can start on our main story of the night. Welcome, Rich.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
It's always good,
to have you back. Well, let's go ahead and start off with some of the new GPSRs that have been released and announced, and of course most people are going to notice the Garmin units, particularly the Oregon 600 series. And Bad Cop, you actually got one of those, the 600 or 650? Which did you end up with?
I got just the 600.
Okay, you got the 600.
Yep.
And I actually got the 650T and took it back that very same weekend.
Wow, you are kind of fickle, aren't you? You're picky when it comes to GPSs.
Yes, I am. That one, oh boy, we'll get into it a little bit later on. But Rich, why don't you give us your impression of those units?
Well, yeah, I've got the 600 too. I've got it right here. Let's see if I can hold that up there. So, yeah, I've been out playing around with it for, gosh, I guess it's been out for a couple of months now. And, yeah, it's interesting. I haven't finished complete testing of it, but I'm pretty happy so far. It seems to be some of the more mature firmware that Garmin's put out in terms of a new release. Usually they have a lot of updating to do before it gets right. And not that this one is without problems, but it's been pretty good. The one thing that I've noticed is that it's so easy to accidentally engage the screen because of this capacitive touch.
Oh, and it seems like
think we
we're
might have
losing
lost
Rich there. But yeah, what he's talking about is the capacitive touchscreen on those Oregon 600s tend to get a lot of accidental activations, and in part that's because it is that capacitive touchscreen, which is a lot easier to activate. You don't have to push on it like you did some of the older ones. But also, they've gotten rid of that lip around the edge that was kind of the protector. So if you remember the biking power caching by bike episode, our guest there had the 600 and was telling us his trick is to use one of the user buttons as the screen lock, and you will need to do that because it is so easy to activate the screen.
You know, and that was one of the first things I did once you carry it around, you're using it, it's no problem. But as soon as you put it in your pocket, backpack, whatever, that thing's just going all over the place. I changed profiles 3 or 4 times, moved fields around that I didn't intend to, and I was like, okay, now I've got to hit the user button to lock that screen. It's very sensitive, which isn't a bad thing.
Well, yeah, it's not a bad thing when you're trying to hit the screen, but when you're just walking around and accidentally marking caches found, that could be a problem.
Without a doubt. I'm happy with mine. I think it's a good improvement over the previous Oregon line. However, I notice a lot of the same problems have been carried through in the Oregon 600 that we saw in the 200s, 300s, and 400s. And whatever happened to the 500s?
Well, they had the 550.
In Oregon? Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah, they had they came out with the 450 and the 550, and the 500 was basically the 400 with a camera.
Okay.
So
I'd forgotten that one.
The 600 series is basically just the new version with the new software and everything. But now, Rich, hopefully you're back and getting good audio for us again. What was your impression as far as the accuracy goes? Because I was really excited that this has the GLONASS, but more than a little surprised that was disabled by default.
Yeah, and I actually looked today, and they say in the manual that it will eat up the battery life faster if you have them both engaged. So I actually wasn't aware of that until today, but that makes perfect sense. Accuracy, I've had some problems with it being off. I've seen some track logs off, and the reported accuracy on it, what you see in the accuracy field, seems to be higher than other units. However, other times I'm out testing it, and track logs for other units are off, and this one's spot on. So I've yet to come to a firm conclusion about it at this point. It doesn't seem to be any worse than any of the other ones, or necessarily any better than the other ones.
All right. Well, Stephen Infinitum, I believe that was his name, Corey, just posted on Google Plus that he's still going to use his trusty Colorado, and boy, my Colorado 300 was probably the worst of the GPSs that I had. Oh boy, that one was nasty, and that one had that 40-foot or 100 and something foot drift problem where you had to reboot the unit when it just suddenly would be off by 100 feet or whatever all the time.
Wow.
Oh, wow. I remember the screen visibility on those. I left mine on top of the car one day and drove off with it and never saw it again. So I really wasn't that disappointed to see that one go.
I was going to say, I let
you
mine
did that on purpose.
I let mine to someone and it never came back, which, again, I'm not crying about too much.
Darn.
But, yeah, those were certainly better in some ways than the first of those Oregons, and you mentioned that screen readability. The Oregon 200 through 550s have that resistive touch that added that extra layer, so the Oregon 600 with that capacitive touch gets rid of that additional layer and really does make for a much nicer, easier to read screen than the other touch models.
Yeah, it is a huge improvement. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not sure what else at play there in terms of the technology. There may be some other things there happening as well where they've made improvements. But it is, it's probably as bright as my 62S or my eTrex 20 that I carry around too.
I was just going to say the screen visibility reminds me so much of the GPS Map 62 ST that I use. And that's actually one of the reasons why I took mine back, my 650T, because after coming from the 62 as a cacher, the Oregon 600 series has so much trouble drawing the list fields and or the list screens and even just panning around on the map that it really felt like I was back on like a Dakota.
Ah, interesting. So you're seeing some delays.
I was seeing major delays to the point of it being completely unusable at times as I tried drawing. And it wasn't a matter of loading, because you'd scroll down the list and then those caches would load, and the caches that were just displayed were gone, and you have to go back and wait for those. So it's not that it's loading the GPX or anything, and it wasn't happening in just the list. It's something with the way that they're addressing the screen draws on this new model. And to see that in the first version of the product really was disappointing to me, because like the Colorado 300 that I had that just never really got fixed. And it's one of those things with the Garmin units. If they don't have a fix out fairly quick after release for some of those major type issues, I'm not willing to give them the second chance on it.
Interesting. Yeah, I have, now that you mention it, I have seen some delays on scrolling through lists and things like that. I see delays on my 62S too on map scrolling, but I've got it loaded down with a lot of maps too. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, the 62 does have some draw issues with the maps, but that's not any worse than any other units I've seen, especially when you're starting to talk about some of those bigger map files. But this was just terrible. I mean, it was the Oregon 200 that we had loaded up with the topo maps on an SD card was still faster at screen draws than the Oregon 600. And we're talking the Oregon 650T with no extra maps, just the built-in topos. So that was really the clincher. When I said that problem, is like, no, I'm not going to even worry about this one anymore. I'm taking it back, and I'll stick with my 62ST for now, because I think this unit has some serious problems to be addressed, and hopefully it's just going to be a software fix. But that's the kind of stuff that they don't want the screen draw problems on a first unit. That's one of the things that they're going to try fixing, before they release, because that's going to be a big issue.
Right. I wonder if it could just be a certain batch of them had that problem. I've seen some other. I don't remember what the problem was, but there was some speculation that there was another issue that came up on some of them early on that somebody said, it may have just been a bad batch because it wasn't widely reported, but I'm not sure what would cause that hardware-wise.
Yeah, see, and that's what really worried me, is that maybe it is a bad batch of chips or something, and they were going to have to do a hardware recall if that was the case. But I've heard from many, many people that these Oregon 600s have this screen draw problem. It was not something that I was having exclusive to this unit, because that was my first thing is, oh, well, this is so bad, I'm thinking I have a bad unit. And then after talking with some other people who have used it, this is fairly common. And if you're not using it so much, if you're like an outdoors enthusiast who's using it mostly for tracks and to find this point and that point, it's really not going to show any signs of this in most cases. You're going to be fine. But for those of us who are geocachers doing multiple caches in a high density area, it's going to be a problem because it just takes so long. To give you an idea just how long it was, I was out on a very short power trail-ish run as a quick test, and it took, from the time I started scrolling through the list and back up, I had already found the next cache on the list.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Daryl, I'm thinking you had a bad unit.
It could be that I still had a bad unit. I'm not ruling that out entirely, but I am hearing all kinds of problems with the screen draw on the Oregon 600 units. So at this point, I get to return mine, obviously, and I really don't want to recommend it to anyone until that's been addressed. And it's not, my unit might have been exceptionally bad, but it is a problem that I'm hearing from users of all of the Oregon 600 series.
Now, mine isn't significantly faster than the older Oregon 200, but I've put City Navigator maps on there, as well as the topo maps that came with it, and it does fine. I'm not worried about losing the map while it redraws it. What I do notice are the lists. So I loaded up with 1,000 caches, and with that new capacitive touchscreen, you can really whip through those things pretty quick. And you're going so much faster than what the screen can redraw. And as Daryl said, you go up, you go down the list, and then you back up to go back up the list, and it has to redraw that entire list. It doesn't cache anything in memory. So
no,
well,
I did try.
Disappointed about.
Yeah, I did try putting only 100 caches in there as well to see if it was related to the volume of caches. Mm-hmm. And even at 100 caches, actually I don't think it was even 100. I think it came out to be like 20-something caches. Mm-hmm. But even with that small number of caches, it was still having the screen draw problems.
Okay.
So it's not related, near as I can tell, to what's in that list. It's mm-hmm. a matter of it just not being able to refresh. And as a video guy, the interlace drawing that they're doing really drove me nuts too. Well, that's one of those things that most people aren't going to notice, but to me, the interlacing really freaked me out.
Well, in the chat room, Stephen ad infinitum is blaming it all on operator error.
All right, I'll be willing to try another unit, but I'm not going to be buying another unit. Let's put it that way.
I think we stumped Daryl there for a moment. Okay.
All right. Well, in any case, the other thing was right at the time when I took delivery of my 650T, they also announced the new Montera, which isn't coming out for a while. And this one is a really intriguing unit because, as we've been talking about, we fully expected to see Android-based GPSs starting to come out for a variety of reasons. One is you no longer have to host an OS. You can just pick up an OS off the shelf. And folks like Magellan have been using Windows CE as their foundation, which I don't mm-hmm. remember what it's called now. But they've been basing their units off of a off-the-shelf OS to simplify their and improve their costs on the device. I'm sure their R&D. So this is something that we've been seeing, and I really was interested in this because, among other things, they said it was available it's available to download stuff from the Play Store. So this one, to me, really seemed like it might be the ultimate caching device.
It's an interesting device. I'm really excited to try it out. I'm very curious what app developers will do with it. The price point makes me think that Garmin's treating it kind of like the Montana. They're not really looking for widespread adoption. They're looking for some high-end beta testers maybe to pay to test this thing for them, because the price point's $649 and $699, and that's getting up there.
Yeah, it definitely is a very pricey unit. There's a number of other things that I wanted to talk about with that unit. But before we do, Nighthawk 700 had written in on Google Plus before the show and said, "I'm sure it's too early to say anything about the Montera, at least based on actual hands-on usage, but I look forward to thoughts on it. My only pause is a low-resolution screen, and will that affect the usability of apps like CacheSense? Of course, we'll see how much sticker shock there will be. I'm currently being furloughed, so blah, 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 blah." Yeah, and he mentioned the price point there, which it is very expensive for a handheld GPS. My impression was it's kind of in line with the smartphone pricing unsubsidized, and that was my first reaction. Is okay, this is an Android-based hardware priced like other Android-based hardware, but without a lot of those radios and without a screen that's going to give you enough resolution to run any apps on.
Exactly. That screen resolution worries me.
Yeah. Now, Rich, you had
and
said you expected to see app developers writing stuff specifically for this, and I really think, based on that screen resolution, they're going to have to write stuff specifically for this unit because it's a weird aspect ratio, and it's lower resolution than the very first Android phone, which was at G1. So it has fewer pixels on that screen than a 6-year-old. Actually, maybe it's not 6 years old. Maybe it's more like 5. But whatever, the first essentially beta phone on Android had a better resolution screen than this thing does.
Yeah, I know. I've seen other people question the resolution on it, and I don't know how they're going to handle that in terms of apps. I'm trying to remember. I think it must be the same resolution as the Montana. I mean, I think the case and all appears to be pretty much identical to the Montana, except maybe for some buttons on it. So they may just be saving costs by not updating that screen.
Yeah, well, I could definitely see trying to use the same screens. But I didn't even look at the Montana to find out what the resolution was there. You'd taken a look at some of the other units and couldn't find anything that matched the resolution, so I was thinking that maybe it was a different screen altogether. Maybe it came from like their Nuvi line or something. It just was a bizarre resolution that doesn't seem to match anything.
Yeah, I bet it does match up with the Montana. I'm trying to remember. I don't recall them saying that was going to be a capacitive touchscreen either. Surely it is, though.
Yeah, I do seem to recall that it was capacitive.
Okay.
I can't say for sure.
Well, they're not using the same screen as the Montana then.
Well, I think they're probably using the same screen but a different touch panel. Because don't forget that most of these. It is still two separate pieces. Most smartphones is still two separate pieces. There's only a few of the touch or the LCD panels that include the touchscreen. One of them is the iPhone 5, which was the first to use the in-cell on any major scale. But that is nice because it makes it thinner, and you don't have to worry about dust getting in between the two, which I've had problems with on a number of old devices. And also, you don't have to worry about the registration and parallax as much.
All right, that's a good point. Well, it does have some other interesting things. I mean, we're talking about, it's got a FM radio, NOAA weather radio. It's got a UV sensor, 1080p video camera. This map merge technology where it can do like 3D, a 3D map with the bird's eye aerial imagery and all. So there's some interesting things there, but I just don't see it getting wide scale adoption with that price.
No, I don't either, and I really have to kind of wonder what their plan is on this kind of stuff. Are they going to start trying to shrink this down or what? But more than that, I started to wonder if this isn't going to be an app that we start seeing for smartphones. Are they going to start taking whatever software they're using as their GPS app and making that available in the Play Store?
Interesting question.
Well, they never leveraged the Nuvi phone. They worked and developed the software, put it on older hardware, and I realized it didn't sell. But they never leveraged that software, and I thought they should have.
No, they didn't, but they did try to do their Street Pilot software for iOS, and that didn't sell, so they ended up buying Navigon,
right?
And that became their primary one. But they are still doing Street Pilot and have some people who really swear by that. So I just don't know what the plan is or where they're hoping to go with it, but I do kind of hope to see Garmin come out with their maps available through some kind of outdoors app on the Play Store.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we can start seeing that on other platforms as well. But this is an Android phone. They are claiming it has support for the Play Store, so I wouldn't be too surprised to see, eventually, not necessarily at launch, but eventually a app come out from them. And I think that this might, the success of the Montera might kind of dictate that. If they have enough success that it looks like they can sell the phone, or sell the GPSR actually, rather than just the app, I think they'll go that way. But if it doesn't sell so well, maybe they'll sell the, break out the app and sell the app on its own, hoping to, get some sales there. Yeah, I just have to think that at this point they're losing a lot of the sales, especially at the lower end, to the smartphones. And this, and this is what really puzzles me about this. This is a high-end device that really seems like it should be targeted more at the lower-end users than at the higher-end users.
Well, they're putting a high-end price on a lower-end product, from what I can see. So that's confusing the market. We got another comment in the chat room about. So does this mean they get to geocache and play Ingress on the very same device?
Yeah, well, and that's one thing. We don't know what kind of video hardware this has, what's driving that screen. Mm-hmm. But I can already tell you that the screen resolution is too low, that Ingress will not work. So Ingress is not going to be an option on this unit. A couple of people had asked that, and I don't remember if it was an official answer or not, but basically the answer that came out of the guys in the know is that Ingress will not work on this device because the resolution of the screen is too low.
Right.
And when I started looking at it, my guess is that CacheSense and Neon Geo and even the official geocaching app aren't going to work because they need a wider screen at the very least, to even fit in like their toolbars.
Right. I don't see anything on the App Store, I'm sorry, in the Android marketplace that's going to work on this phone.
No, I really have to think that anything is going to have to be written to support this screen. Yeah.
On this GPS.
Yeah, on this Android device.
On this device, really on whatever device we have.
Yeah, I really kind of figured it's more of a tablet with a low-res, smaller screen that's been ruggedized. But, and we just also got a comment that it is Wi-Fi, and that is something to note. You have to have a hotspot, tethered to your phone, carry around one of the MiFis or something like that as well to get the access. But you don't need the access with their app, to go caching or something like that. It's more a matter of, load up your caches that way. So there are a lot of really nice things about this that, as a cacher, I was excited that I could probably grab this, download my caches without needing a computer onto this device. Mm-hmm. And that alone seemed like it would make this worthwhile. However, so many of these other things are just raising questions, and because we haven't actually gotten our hands on one, and to the best of my knowledge, no one really has been able to do any testing. Rich, you might know better than we do on that.
Not that I know of, and they keep these things pretty tightly under wraps. They do have some early beta testers who seem to get these things a month ahead of time. I expect they're going to have it at Outdoor Retailer, which I believe is early August this year, so they'll probably be showing it off then. But the latest release date, the latest street date I've seen for this is September 12th.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if we actually see it on September 12th in stores. But we'll certainly look for those reviews to come out about that time, and hopefully we're pleasantly surprised. But at this point, I'm just not really thinking that this is going to be a viable option for geocachers. This isn't the only Android-based device, though. Rich, you actually reviewed the Rand McNally Forest 850, which, as I understand it, is another Android-based GPS.
Is it Android? I I didn't see any evidence of that. I saw some things that made me think it might be Windows CE based, but I could just be missing that somewhere. It's quite possible.
Okay. Well, in any case, that's another new entry, and I think that's the first thing that we've seen in that unit, and from that manufacturer. But it's actually not manufactured by Random now; it's just branded that way.
Right. It is from Falk in Europe, and it's an interesting unit. It's got some novel features to it. It's got a preloaded trails database. It's got loop routing. It will give you alternative routes with elevation gain showing. Those are really neat features. I'd love to see Garmin implement some things like that. The rest of it was pretty darn clunky. It's a very rudimentary looking interface. I could not get Pocket Queries to load to it, just drag and drop. You have to go through their interface, which is Windows only. There were just a number of things that were problematic with it that I ran across. Plus, it's $400. I would go with the Oregon 600 well before I would go towards this Red McNally Forest unit for that money.
All right. Well, that's good information to know. But I do always like having more of these guys out there, giving Garmin a run for their money, because Garmin has a lot of units out there. There's a good variety, but as geocachers, almost everyone I've talked with is liking their Garmin unit, but wishes it would do this thing or that thing, and they have this problem that they never solved or that problem they never solved. I really loved my PN40. That became my go-to unit for a long time because it was more stable and more accurate, and had some of the best paper caching at the time, or paperless caching at the time. But at this point, I hate to say, I just really use my iPhone for just about everything, because it's there with me all the time. It's constantly connected. It's really tough to beat, and that's one of the things we didn't mention on the Oregon 600 when we started talking about it. One of the things that I was most excited to hear was that Bluetooth connectivity through the Basecamp mobile software, and that turned out to be just 100% useless.
I have not tried that. I'm an Android guy in terms of my phone, and it's not available as an Android app, so haven't had a chance to try that. It just didn't work. Didn't work for you though, huh?
Well, it worked, but the whole thing is completely useless. Basically, near as I could tell, the only thing that you could do is send and receive stuff that you had already sent to their servers. And really, it looks like it's more for fitness. You can take your track files and upload it to their server. You can download stuff from their server onto the unit, but it doesn't do geocaches. So it's 100% useless. It doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, for geocachers. Now, if you're into fitness, then I think it would be useful. However, I would not want an Oregon 600 series with me if I'm going for a run, if I'm going for a jog, something like that. That's when you really want, a fitness watch.
Sure.
And that's what the Basecamp Mobile was designed for, was that Phoenix, which I do want to talk about a little later. But getting back into the Android arena, one of the most interesting and compelling devices I've seen in a long time is this Kickstarter project called Earl.
Yes, that one looks very interesting. It's this e-ink tablet, 6-inch screen, I believe, and it looks very interesting. Trying to remember some of the other specs. It's got built-in two-way radios. It's got FRS and whatever the other one is, GPRS.
GMRS. Yeah.
Right.
Or GP.
Whatever that
so
one
the,
is.
Now, taking a quick detour, one of the gentlemen in our chat room believes that the Falk devices are actually rebranded Magellan devices. So if that's the case, it probably is Windows CE on those things, because Magellan is using CE. But there was at least one of the Falk devices that had been using Android, which I think is how I got confused.
Okay.
But
Well,
I did not find it when I went back to look at their site just a moment ago, so it could have been a short-lived and failed experiment.
Oh
So
wow,
let's get back to the Earl.
yeah, no, but that's very interesting though, because I think you may be right. I think those things may be the old Magellan Triton hardware. I'm gonna have
Oh
to go back and
no!
look at the shape of those things,
Wow.
but that makes perfect sense.
Oh, yikes!
A blast
All
from the
right.
past.
Yeah,
In,
indeed.
in not the good way. Retro.
No.
Well,
is not
let's
good
get back to
when
the
we're
Earl
great.
because that's actually a pretty exciting device.
Yeah.
Now, we should say on that 6-inch tablet with the e-ink, that means it's also black and white. This is not
Yes.
going to give you a color, and I think that might be a little bit of a game changer for geocachers. It's still a bigger device, but it is smaller than like an iPad. So,
Mhm.
it is going to be much more useful. It has that solar cell in the back to charge the device, which
Yes.
just intrigued the heck out of me. And that's one of the reasons why they did have lower specs on this thing than you'd really expect it to
Mhm.
have. They ruggedize the thing. It can take the abuse. It can take the moisture. Supposedly, the thing hasn't actually been released yet, so we certainly haven't been
Right.
able to test it. But this is what they're claiming. The price tag wasn't too bad, right?
I want to say $399.
Yeah, I'm thinking 300 to 350. I think 300 if
There
you
you go.
pre-order and
Okay.
350 later on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought I had seen like a 350 price range, and you could get it for less if you had done the Kickstarter or whatever, and they also had some other packages. But the Kickstarter program is over. It has been fully funded with more than enough money to bring it to the market, and
Saw that.
I'm really excited about this
Mhm.
thing. Not that I think again this is really going to work well for cachers, but for what it might mean. And I hate to say it because I really do like where these guys came from and where they're going with it. I worry that because it's this little group that's coming out with it that either they're going to get eaten up by someone bigger who wants the talent and whatever they were able to build, or it's just going to get crushed by other people.
Right.
Even
Well,
so, they're pushing the marketplace. And
Yes.
that's what I want from a Kickstarter project. Something that, the Magellans and the Garmins say, no, we're not going to go this way. Bring it in, crowdsource it, or crowdfund it, and say, here, this is what we're going to do. Now you guys have to catch up.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
don't see someone like Sony going after this market. But Sony has been pushing into the more durable units, so has Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pushing those guys, and they're going to be pushing the guys like Garmin.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that they're going to stick around and hit that niche that these guys aren't as likely to hit. But I just do kind of worry about it. It's still a device, though, that I really want to see.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm very happy to see them come around. These mainstream companies like Garmin and Magellan, they just don't innovate that quickly. So it's really nice to see small players like this come into the market and, like you say, push things a little bit. One thing that surprised me about it is it's e-ink, and if I'm not mistaken, the specs still say 16-hour battery life. So I would have expected that to be higher, although it's got all these radios and Bluetooth
Yeah.
and shortwave and AM/FM and I don't know how they're rating the battery life, how they're testing it for that. So that may account for some of it. But you would think an e-ink screen, you might expect longer battery life than that.
Well, don't forget that the e-ink is not e-paper. It's not that turn it on to change it and then it's off again. This is actually something that's live. It is still an LCD. And that's one of the
Right.
things that's really come up with the Pebble Watch, because people were thinking that was going to be e-paper when they read it, and it was e-ink, and it's just a matter of the terms are so close that people get confused. The e-paper is just a really low draw LCD that does a wonderful job of good readability and low power.
Right.
But you're talking about a 6-inch panel, and that's bigger than what we've seen for most of the e-ink screens. So the battery life really didn't surprise me all that much, especially
Well,
because it is running some decent hardware from what I can tell under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that makes sense because like you point out, you probably will have a much faster screen refresh rate with this. I mean, if it's going to be there redrawing topo maps and things, then yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I would not want e-paper for my topo maps as I'm trying to, pan around. That would just be insane. But you don't expect the kind of redraws that you're going to get off something like a Nexus 7 or your Galaxy S4. This is a slower screen technology than that is, but it's a lot lower power, and it's going to be very readable, or should be very readable, without requiring the backlight as do your color LCDs. So,
and I think that's the key to getting the 20-hour battery life.
Yeah, and they're not putting a huge battery in this thing from what I can tell, because that's extra expense, extra weight. You don't necessarily want that with you. So I think what they've done is strike a good balance. You've got that solar cell on there. If you charge this thing up and you go hiking, I'm guessing that it's going to do a pretty good job of keeping itself from going dead just with the solar cell on the back.
That will be interesting to see how well it works for that. Whether this is something that backpackers who don't mind an extra pound or 12 ounces or whatever it is, who don't mind that, will be able to take it along and have it work for several days.
Yeah. Now again, this one is not out right now. We haven't really seen it, but for the geocachers on the show right now, what do you think the pick would be for a GPS? Because my impression is still the eTrex 30 is about the best geocaching GPSR on the market today. Rich, what's your pick?
I love my 62S. I have to say, I've lived with several generations of that form factor from the 60CS and 60CSX, and I like the buttons, and it's my go-to unit. And part of it's because I have a bird's eye topo on there, so I've always got the real USGS topo maps on it. So of course that's the one I'm going to grab. But I do like it. I also tend to mountain bike a lot, so I like having the buttons for that. But yeah, in terms of the eTrex 30 is a great one. Those I've got the 20 myself, and those are solid units. They're really, really nice, and I do like having the GLONASS on them.
Yeah, solid units with the GLONASS at a reasonable price point. And I love my 62S as well. Still has some things that kind of bother me about the way it works, but it's a workhorse, and I love that one. But with the GLONASS and the price point of those new eTrex units, that just really has been a very attractive package for cachers. What's your pick, Bad Cop?
I tend towards, and I know we gave it a lot of flack, but the Oregon 600. It's the latest version in the Oregon line. I think it does pretty well. They've created a lot of shortcuts, added some extra buttons on the side to jump quickly to log your caches. It still has the same workflow issues as the original Oregon, where if I don't necessarily want to find the next closest cache, but give me the list of caches and let me choose the one I want to go to, rather than you get this next cache or you're dumped back out to the menu. So, but other than that, I used it on a power caching day, and within 10-15 minutes I was comfortable with it. So it's a lot like the original Oregon 200, but with a little better hardware behind it.
All right. Well, hopefully that unit gets some of the screen draw problems that I've experienced taken care of, and it's even possible that we might see something added in one of the firmware issues that could address some of those accidental activations they've done it with a lot of the tablets, the iPad Mini. Oh, I poo-pooed the screen rejection or the hold rejection stuff that they were talking about, because just, it's a nice idea. It probably works in the lab, but it's not going to work in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've tried it at the Apple Store. I haven't actually tried one in person, aside from that, but I've tried it at the Apple Store. I've talked with some people who use it, and that screen rejection stuff that they're using in the Mini is beautiful. They haven't had the problems with the accidental activations that we see on the other devices, including my iPhone, which drives me nuts sometimes. And Samsung has it on some of their devices now as well, and it really does do a beautiful job. So hopefully that kind of stuff will be addressed in firmware. I just don't want to count on it. So, for the price, I think my pick is still the eTrex 20 or 30. I like the 30 because of the Ant Plus in there, so that you can do some of the wireless transfers between units, which is handy on the trail, especially if you're going out with other people. Mm-hmm. And then, Rich, your pick is the 62S?
Yes.
Another great unit. I actually use the ST. That's my favorite. And then, Bad Cop, your pick is going to be the Oregon 600.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rich, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we would have loved to have gotten to some of the other stuff and what we could see coming, but we are running a little long, and I'm sure we have people who have already stopped the podcast, so we're going to wrap it up and save that for hopefully another show, and hopefully we can have you on again to talk with us.
All right. That'd be great. It's always a pleasure, guys.
Now, Rich, tell us one more time where we can get a hold of you and all the articles that you write.
You can find me and everything I write at gpstracklog.com.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Glad to.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Zuffenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.